Hey everybody, Brian King here again. Welcome to the On Purpose Man. We're doing it a little differently this time. The previous shows we did live on Blab, but unfortunately the internet bandwidth in the Canary Islands, where Frank lives, was not cooperating with us. So we're doing it pre-recorded, and Frank is joining us today, and he no doubt is going to add a wealth of wisdom and energy to our dynamic here. So the way today's episode is going to flow, we're going to let Frank talk about his history, his memories of his relationship with his father, and he's also going to share how he came up with the idea that brought three of us together to begin with. And then we're going to segue into the topic for today. So let's begin with Frank. Tell us, where did this idea of yours come from?
Well, the initial start point, I think 2 or 3 months ago, was a lady. Because we talked about like a TV partner, and we talked a bit about what is she doing? She's working only for women. And when she mentioned that, I said, oh, maybe I should do something for men. And she hopped just on that, and we started to discuss that, and it was really I noticed that it's a wish for a long time, because I made programs with girls, the ladies along, I took the men along, and then we met each other again, but I never did it online. So
it's funny how many interesting things come from just an in-the-moment conversation with another.
Exactly. And I was talking to another lady a week later, and she said, oh, you have to meet Brian. Brian and I met Steve some days before. He also said he is on that line. And so I met Brian 2 days later. I think it was a Saturday, and we came up with so much ideas that we have to make something with that. And I said, okay, Steve is on the same mission, so let us three make something.
Now, it's gone beyond just working with men or working with women. You know,
exactly.
We kind of, by putting the three of our heads together, and you had a term, the new man. You know, and the term I came up with was the unconditional man, but it all really boils down to the fact that we think that what it means to be a man, especially in Western society, is on an evolutionary trend towards increased vulnerability and authenticity.
Exactly.
And that there are men that are seeking to do this, but just don't have the role models around them to show them how it's done. So we decided to come together and kind of create this momentum, or create a program eventually to show men the way to do this.
I think it's not anymore such thing like a role model, because if everybody really ends in his power and his forces, in his potentials, so everybody will be different in itself, and it's no need for a role model. Maybe for the youngsters, for the 15, 16-year-old, but not so much for ourselves. If we really find our purpose in life, our inner alignment with that purpose, and with our higher self, I think. Also, this is a spiritual word, which is not so much like in business, for example. But that brings us into that flow, what we need. I think plenty of men today are working in their business and still working in their old paradigms, still working in competition and in that hard, and it will get harder and harder every time. So if we show them that there are new paradigms, that there are new rules, what is meant to be a man, or what is meant to be a businessman, man in business, how we're doing business today. So I think it should go into the flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw our economy almost melted down, half a decade ago because of that old competitive dog-eat-dog paradigm. And now the next generation, the millennials, is demanding more. They want more purpose. They want more accountability. They want something else. And I just wanted to clarify what I meant by role modeling. I had role models of men that I saw that I thought were genuine, that were heartfelt. I have no desire to be them. I just have a desire to walk a similar path. But ultimately, it's my journey. It's going to be me doing the walking. So, and I think that's what we're trying to do here. One of the things I think Steve and I did in our first episode was we talked about our relationship with our own fathers. And Frank, is that anything that you want to share about that?
Well, my father was a real, or is, he is still living, is a real smooth man. And I saw plenty of loving in between my parents. But he had an issue. He was working hard for the company he's working in and bringing the problems to the table on at home. So even he was not that normal, social-like, strong father. He was not there for us. And of course, I have been sculpturing for 30 years, and he didn't understand what is art. Now I'm making coaching. He don't understand even what I'm doing. And I still want to him to understand me, to understand and respect what I'm doing. And there's no way. You're only doing something there and losing your money and losing your time. And that hurts me. So I think we all are looking for the what is it called in English? The accreditation of our fathers.
Oh, our validation.
Validation? Yeah.
Validation, okay. And that could be hard thing sometimes, depending on how conscious we about that. Because I saw people falling in drugs and alcohol even with 50s because they don't get that from the father.
Yeah, and one thing I think Steve and I talked about, I don't remember which episode we discussed it in, is sometimes you need to let go of that.
Exactly.
Because it's just not there, especially when you see how quickly society is evolving. The generational gap gets wider so quickly that it can be harder and harder for you to ask your forebears to embrace, accept, let alone understand what the heck you're doing.
Exactly.
So it was very liberating when I was able to make peace with not getting my father's validation, realizing that I didn't need it. And I was able to spread my wings after that.
The funny things, I spoke 2 hours ago to a 27 years old girl, and I know her since she's 1 year old because her father was my best friend. And she said the same what you said to me. You have to let go that. They are so conscious now that young generation. I was astonished. I wanted to make some coaching with her, and it was just she knew it. She knew the techniques out of herself. So it's really, really nice to see that new generation, born about 89 to 2000, is in that consciousness. They are born with that consciousness.
Yeah, the younger kids can't grow up with the privilege of denial like we did when we were kids, because they grew up with a 24-hour news cycle and everything in their face. So they're very aware of this world that we live in. You know, they're having to learn some truths very, very young.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things that contributes to that not only is the news, but also just how free information is. And I don't mean just, you know, cost-wise. I mean that it's available all the time. That you see a much more global environment than what I saw when I was a kid. I remember two things when I was young. There were like two countries in the world. It was the United States and Russia, and you know, there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, other than that, and it was this total enmity between the two states.
It was black and white, the good ones and the bad ones, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and there's still a lot of that. I mean, I see that a lot, especially during this political campaigning going on right now this year. But there's so much more available. You know, and going earlier off of what Brian was and you, Frank, were saying about role models, is that I think when we are authentic, when we're vulnerable, and when we follow our higher selves or our purpose, when we look to find that each one of us is going to have our own individual role. You know, I look at the businesses that each one of us run, the type of coaching that we do, and we're all very unique. But we also kind of have the same commitment to being authentic and being vulnerable and being real. You know, and I think that's a new dynamic. Instead of there being one way, there are many ways, and not one way is necessarily better than another.
And I think even it's important to see that this individuality, former time it was just individual. And I think now the individuum has to be embedded in the society and accepted and respected, you know. That's one of the new paradigms I'm plenty of times talking about. The new time, in the new era of Aquarius, and the new paradigms. And I think it's now coming to not to be this single soldier or 007 or something like that, but integrated. And if everybody finds his individuality, his authenticity, and it's a great world, because I give something which is really mine. You give something which is you really use. You know, there's no mechanic who don't like to be mechanic. He loves the mechanic, and like one man told me, his father was very good with the cars. If there's a hit in the car, I don't know what is it called.
A dent.
Oh yeah, the body.
Yeah, and he knew exactly where to give a hit that come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was really genius.
Yeah.
Huh? It one hit and it came out and was like before. But of course he couldn't tell that the clients, because they would say, "Oh, you charge me 100 pounds for one hit, or $100." It couldn't be. So he said to them, "Let the car here and look for it in 2 days."
Yeah, my response would have been, "Okay, you go ahead and do it then, and you'll be paying me for 2 dents."
Yeah.
You know, you don't know how to do that.
Well, who was it I think there was, I don't remember which artist it was, but they sold the painting for whatever it was, you know, a fair chunk of change. And the comment was, you know, you didn't pay me for this painting, you paid me for the lifetime that led to be able to do this painting. I
like that.
So
yeah, Joseph Beuys even signed washing machines like an art, because he said the creativity itself is art. It's not something out there. Everybody could do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm going to start using now is you're not paying me for the advice. You're paying me to save you all the pain and anguish it takes to learn that.
Right, right. Yeah. So you don't have to go through the same stuff that I had to go through in order to get. Yeah, yeah.
Now,
I would have paid good money to not have to go through it in order to know what I know without having to go through the hell that I went through.
Amen to that. And, you know, it's an unfortunate segue, but we're talking about pain and agony. And, you know, before we jumped on the call today, Steve was reflecting upon the mass shooting that just took place in Orlando, where it's anybody's guess, a young man of Middle Eastern descent decided to take a semi-automatic rifle, went into a gay nightclub and killed upwards of 50 people. And the aftershocks of that are still being felt. And because it was a gay club, it again raises that question of what does it mean to be a man? Because there's this, one of the many insults that we throw about is the girly man, you know, you're too sensitive or you're too weak. And, you know, the reality is, you know, what we've been talking about in all of our episodes and just amongst ourselves in general is the idea that what it means to be human and also what it means to be a man exists on a continuum. It's not you're a man or you're not. It's, as Frank was saying, you're the individual, but you're also part of the community. You know, there's some sameness, but there's also some difference. So where would you like to take that topic, Steve?
Well, I think there's a couple things to go off of that. First of all, there are a couple of things that two articles that I read yesterday, as well as a video, and to go off the kind of the Middle Eastern theme, and something that we talked about earlier with the United States versus Russia, is that we have this enmity thing going on, that that we see people as black or white, and I'm not talking race, but that there are a lot of people who are really upset about everybody, and I mean literally everybody that's in the Middle East or from the Middle East. That's completely unfair. The video that I watched yesterday was a series of, I don't know, maybe 12 different Muslims in this case, and they all talked about how different and unique each of them was. That there was a physician in there, there was a gay Muslim, there was it was just a lot of variety within that culture, and we tend to think of these homogenous groups that they're all the same, which is completely not true. And I think that we see the same thing with the shooting in the nightclub, is that we have a tendency to group all these people together that we think well, they're gay or they're homosexual or whatever, but they're along that continuum. I mean, there's an awful lot of variety, and I think that personally, I think that variety and that diversity and the different perspectives and life experiences is really a beautiful thing, and that we really miss out when we limit it to just being black and white. And I think it's an opportunity for us to look within and to see where we stand on the matter, and how do we react to it. A friend of mine on Facebook asked, when we heard the news that there was a shooting in this nightclub and that 49 people technically were killed, that we reacted one way, and then when we heard that it was a gay nightclub, did we react differently? Did our reaction change? And to be honest, it did change for me, and it made it even more sad, because it was it wasn't just this kind of random thing, but it was a targeted group. I just think that kind of enmity and that uncomfortableness that we have with people that are different from us, you know, is really a sad thing. I think we can really start to open our eyes and to see the humanity and the common thread that goes through each of us.
Exactly. I think, you know, I experienced that here also plenty of times. We are an island which is very common of holidays, and plenty of people come here, especially Germans, or from my country, are coming for living here or being here half a year over the winter. But most of them don't speak Spanish.
Hmm.
And they're 20 years here, they have a house built up and all those things, and they nearly can buy a thing in a restaurant. And that's a sad thing. So they also make groups together. They are too comfortable to learn Spanish or to learn another language. I experienced that also in Germany with the Turkish people, for example. The Turkish people are together, even the Russians are together, and plenty of times they don't contact with the people, with the village where they are living in.
So they just kind of cluster together instead of trying to reach out and connect with the larger community.
Exactly.
That happens in the States as well. You have some of the major cities that have, you know, Chinatown and Little Italy, and you have people that have lived their entire lives, and some of these areas are so big, and you have everything you need. There's no real need to go beyond that, and they don't learn the language of the larger population because they've managed to make a small enough world for themselves that they don't need to.
Yeah.
You know, we see that also just, I mean, regardless of nationality, go back to high school, you know, with all the cliques.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you had the jocks and you had the nerds and you had for me, the kind of the new wavers or the punks or whatever, you know, and they all clustered together and didn't really, for lack of a better word, cross-pollinate. You know, and today, you know, we see the same thing with professions. The engineers hang out with engineers, the accountants hang out with the business people hang out with the business people, and the artists hang out with the artists, you know, and there's not a whole lot of intermixing between different kind of ways of being. And I think we can probably look at that in just about any grouping or clustering that goes on, that we see the world through our own lens, and we're comfortable with people that have those same lenses that they're using.
We're coming to the normal thing again, which we talked in the beginning. No, to be normal is to fulfill the norms of the group we're in.
Yeah, and it's also favoring safety at the expense of growth. You know, you want to keep things so familiar that you don't have to risk your ideas being questioned. You know, these things that you've latched onto all these years. You get into your own little group think, you know, which is basically, I'm going to hang around people that agree with me, and any outsiders are dangerous, so we need to lock them away. You see that in Congress every single day.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But we create the enemy again.
Yeah.
Yeah. The enemy is anybody who might teach us.
Yeah, right.
So what do we do with this, gentlemen? I mean, the fact that we are living in a world where there are some people that really want to grow, they really want to reach out, they want to make a difference. But then you have these other groups of people that are so, caught up in their own worldview, so caught up in protecting the way they see things, that they go out of their way to cause pain for the other people who are just saying, hey, I just want us to understand one another. I just want us to learn from one another. And here you are telling me that I shouldn't have rights. I should die. I'm a wimp. Whatever else they come up with. Where do we go from here? How do we address this?
Well, I think the first thing, honestly, is to begin with the individual. I mean, I know that I've given, especially over the years, I've been given plenty of opportunity to look within and to say, do I see otherness, however that otherness may be, as a threat to me, or do I see it as an opportunity? And to be honest, I mean, at times I definitely see it as a threat. The more, and one of the things that shows up for me very frequently is kind of the more linear or analytical, and honestly, that's part of me too. I'm much more comfortable around the creative person than I am around the more rigid. But there's an awful lot that I can learn from the more straight and narrow type of person. My father-in-law is very much that way, and we don't see eye to eye hardly ever. But there's an awful lot of wisdom that's available there that when I do seek it out. And then once we start at the individual, we started at ourselves, and then we expand from there to our community, to our families and to our neighbors and to the people we go to church with or go to school with or go to whatever, and because we can have an impact on our immediate circle of influence. It's kind of hard to have an impact with people you don't have any interaction with. But if we each do that, it can have a ripple effect. That starting out, it's one of the reasons we're doing this the On Purpose Man, is so that we can have a greater and greater ripple effect on the culture.
And continue to have this dialogue, and just think about, engineers hanging out with engineers. I've tried to understand what these guys do when they try to explain it to me. I don't get it, but here's the thing. I still realize that engineers have a purpose in society. So if I were to say, man, that stuff sounds boring. Oh, that sounds stupid. And I believed that my take on things was the way it is. So there's a big sense of self-importance that we really need to unlearn. So that we can say, oh, I hate math, but darn it, am I glad for my accountant.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, I'd be in real trouble. I don't understand medicine, but I'm grateful for my doctor. All those things, they serve a purpose.
Right.
Whether I get it or not. And I can embrace and support those people in what they do. And I have no doubt that, and I read this in an article someplace, that, all you guys that are, gay bashing or whatever, wearing your fancy suits, why don't you do the research and see how many gays were involved in designing that suit?
Right, yeah.
It's maybe none were, but maybe some were. But it's a very interesting question, that you don't realize. Like I was watching, after Orlando, you saw this cap that said, proud American or whatever, but the tag inside said made in China.
Yeah, right.
So it really causes us to be constantly aware of where do our priorities actually lie. Are we pumping our fists and giving, false patriotism, or are we putting our money where our mouth is?
Right.
And I think one of the things that brought the three of us together is that we're committed to walking our talk. Not just pointing our fingers and saying, you should do this and these people should change, but we're really looking to be part of that change.
Yeah, and I think part of that is recognizing, that we individually need to get uncomfortable sometimes. That our way of being isn't, hey, look at me, and all you got to do is live like I do. But that we're all trying to grow, and that we're all trying to expand our awareness and our way of being and interacting with people and with ourselves, for that matter. It's an evolving thing.
Absolutely. Frank, you were going to say?
Yeah, I forgot. I forgot what I wanted to say. But I heard some time ago a good example for that. somebody told a story. He said, imagine that you're living with asphalt. All is what's it called in English? You're sticking to the asphalt, and all around is dirt, and everybody got a gift from God, and one is pulling out the gift. All other are putting it aside. Oh, when I need it, I will open it, and it makes you clean. You don't stick to the asphalt. You don't, and you go there. And the people first say, "Oh, look at that guy! Is a strange thing," and some will, "Hello, how do you do that?" And you say, "Just reveal the gift you got." Yeah. And some will do that also. So this sum 2 or 3. Now we are 4, which is going without sticking to the asphalt. And so it's going on. So I think the thing what you said, Brian, before, we are example. So much role model, but examples where some people say, oh, like this young lady I spoke 2 hours ago. She said, you know what? I come down to Tenerife and you teach me. Oh. You know, in this moment, she's interested in something new, in expansion, and she's looking for it. And she take the thing which is near, which she sees. Oh, you always have been special since I can think. Yeah. And so that's the thing I think we have to. I like also the speech of Nelson Mandela when he got president. There's a part in it where it says, if you do something which is special, if you step out into your greatness, you automatically give the allowance to the others to do the same. Mm-hmm. So this explodes the norms of the group. If you invite it to a group and you're speaking about that, or you're showing them, that's possible, I'm doing that. So they say, oh, wow, yeah, it's something more than I thought could be. Because the environment is also taking the information and it's shifting. So we can make a shift, I think, in this sense, in this moment. But it will be drops. And we have to wait to the critical mass to get to get more exposure or more global movement energy.
Frank, I think something you just said is a perfect way to wrap up our conversation. Is when you talked about what Nelson Mandela was saying, that when you stand out there in a very unique way, you're giving others an invitation to do the same. And I think that's what the three of us are looking to do as well. You know, we're inviting you into this conversation.
I think it's a permission, not only the invitation.
Absolutely. Because when we can do it, we step on the other side of our fear and we show that not only can this be okay, this can work, but you can be happy. You can live this way and the world will not come to an end. And then you invite them to join you in that as well. And the reason why we do these broadcasts, the reasons why we started the On Purpose Man group in Facebook is to invite other men to have this conversation with us. And if there are enough of us talking about it, then hopefully it will begin to blossom and spread. And before you know it, this shift that we see taking place anyway, that we are embracing instead of resisting, it can begin to shift society in a much better way.
Yeah. I once had a guy, he was a bricklayer, a normal bricklayer. And it wasn't saying some plenty things in this seminar. But at the end, he made one question. He said, okay, if we're coming to the area of Aquarius now, so I know what was in the area of era of Pisces, because I was living there. How are the new paradigms? And I thought, oh, and what thoughts is making a bricklayer? And if he is pulling out that thoughts in his group when he's making a wall or something, when he's on work, the other will say, oh, what ideas. But then they hear it maybe on the radio or in a podcast also say, oh, that's the second time I heard that. Our guy would have been right. And so it's spreading the word, I think. It's one form of spreading the word.
So let's continue to spread the word. Steve, thanks again. Frank, I'm so glad that we were finally able to find the right combination of technology and internet. So that
me too.
Conversation. So those of you who are watching this on replay, go look us up on Facebook at the On Purpose Man group. Join us in the conversation and show us what it means to bring your unique man to the world. Talk to you again soon, guys.
Good to talk to y'all.